Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin Show. It is your Taco Tuesday edition. Hope you all had a great day out there. I did a little bit more research and filled in some blanks on some numbers or company names I was talking about yesterday with regards to this XRP Army weird stuff that's going on, which makes me very nervous about the whole crypto space, at least the way that it's propped up by different entities and different business structures. So I will get to that in just a second, but let's start with the gold. Pullback or crash? Today, we obviously saw a gigantic down move. Of course, I think some of us were really expecting it as a 5% down move for gold, that big of a deal. Well, it certainly erased about a week worth of gains, and the big question is, do you see more coming? I know many of you have been extremely bullish, as I have been on gold for quite some time, but I'm going to put a poll in the chat right now. Let's see, is there more downside to gold from here? And just curious what you guys think, and let's see what you guys say. So, part of this was easing tensions, it feels like, between U.S. and China. Number two is a little bit of an up move in the dollar index, but really not enough to warrant. And it's funny because I had a friend of mine sent me a link today to some expert who was saying that the reason we saw gold and silver sell off so much was it was a surge in the dollar, a big surge in the dollar. And I went, really? Let's look at the dollar index here, and here's the Dixie. I don't know if I would call this some big surge. I don't think that this is a gigantic move. Now, granted, from the lows we saw back on last Friday, to where we are today, the dollar index is up roughly 1%. No big deal. I mean, I don't think that that's a gigantic surge. What it is indicative of is a couple different things. Number one, we've been looking at this kind of bigger picture downtrend, right? And it's been making lower lows and lower highs. However, I'm going to put a yellow box around here. As you guys know, I just love the little yellow box. Notice where I have the yellow box drawn right now, and I'll just keep it from the peak to the trough, and we'll zone out. You notice that while it's still technically in a downtrend because it has made lower highs, there's this little glimmer of hope in this yellow box on the screen here. And for me, this is a sign of strength building. It's making higher lows, right? So we have 1, 2, 3 consecutive higher lows that have been made over the past month in the dollar index. What will really be the determining factor is if the dollar index can get above that 99.56, which is roughly the peak that we saw back on October 9th. If that does happen, what we could see is something that looks like this. I'll take down that downtrend line just to make it easy for us to see what's going on here. And then let's do a snap line on the high from back on July 31st. All right, so snap right there. Actually, it's not snapped. I turned the snap tool off. My apologies. Let's get that going. Here we go. So that's at 100.257. Okay. If we get above that 100 line, then technically we can make the argument that we are now making a higher high, right? We've turned the corner and we're making higher highs. And we're making higher lows. So maybe what this is foreshadowing is optimism on dollar strength that we're going to see more upside move. Now, just in the past 28, 30 days or so, I would argue that, yeah, you are seeing some stability come into the U.S. dollar. You are seeing some strength building in that U.S. dollar. But I don't think that downtrend is officially over yet. If we get above that 100 mark, let's say 100 and a quarter, then I will start to put on my bullish hat for the dollar index. But I've mentioned this before. You have the president and Scott Bessent both saying we want a weak dollar. Obviously, they can't directly influence that because it's driven by supply and demand, but they certainly could have a sway on where those things go. Now, Rob says it already bounced up in the demand zone below. Yep. You could argue that. Let me draw another yellow box because, I like the yellow boxes. And unfortunately, it's going to be right on top of this stupid little adjustment tool. So if that is the lower zone, we already bounced out of it, right? And I think as traders, it did actually breach down below that zone there, Rob. It actually didn't go down below. Did you say to go long gold yesterday? I said, yes, long-term gold is going to go up. I've also said that these commodities have gotten a little bit heated. And I said, Margaret, that something is going to give. You generally don't get gold running at all-time highs and equity markets running at all-time highs. One of them is flashing a bearish signal, right? If you look at the chart of gold, the belief was, of course, this is just going to straight textbook theory, right? That it's signaling that the big money, the institutional money, feels like there's a correction in the equity market's coming. That's usually what this means, right? When you see that flight to gold like this, it means that there's something bad coming for the economy. I think it just has a lot to do with uncertainty. I also think it has to do with China hoarding gold, but that's a different story. When you stack that up with the S&P, which has been looking fantastic, like I said, you generally don't get these two things running. And I made the point that while I'm still long-term very bullish on gold long-term, I made the argument that you generally don't get these types of aggressive rallies in gold. And I'll go from the low point we saw here on August 19th to our peak just 2 days ago. That is a 43-day trading window where gold moved up almost 31%. To me, way overdone. As Big Eb said, it's exhausted. It's overextended. That is that's a move that should be retraced. And that's why I put that the survey poll, and I'll just end the poll here. We only had 31 of you today. Come on, you guys can do better than that. Only 31? Come on, get in that poll. When you have a move like this, and now we're starting to see the pullback, I instinctively, because of my, my background in this and my mentors, I instinctively go and I draw Fibonacci levels on it. And right now, if I was to look at the fibs pinpoint a spot right here. I know it's hard for the podcasters when I say here. I'm looking between 4,000 and 3,957. That is a 38% pullback off of this rally that started on the 20th of August to the peak we had just a couple days ago. Actually, to the peak we had just yesterday. So I'm a big fan of this level. As we look at that poll, and I'm going to end it here, 68% of you said there's more downside here for gold. I think so too. I think that there'll be, I don't think we're talking a crater, right? I don't think we're going to see this thing drop to 3,300 or anything like that. But do I see it falling another, let's see, to get down to that 4,000 level I just mentioned, you're looking about a 4% drop. Sure. I mean, we had 5% today. So there's definitely the possibility for us to have more further downside movement here, particularly if that dollar continues its rally to the upside. That could push this gold chart lower and lower. And it was certainly a shock today. It was like a pretty big down move. When I pulled up the markets this morning, I was like, oh, wow, geez, this does not look good. And it's kind of kept on going. Future says, does silver follow gold? Well, silver was just as bad. I actually was looking at selling some puts on silver today, which is down 8%. But I'll tell you, even down 8%, the premium for the remainder of the week was just not there. I probably could have gone out maybe 30 days in my 1% account and gotten a much better rate of return. But, for me, look at the silver chart here. Can anybody in here really spot a demand zone where you go, this one looks great? It's just kind of this choppy, continually moving up almost every single day on silver. Now, if I had to, you put the proverbial gun to my head and said, well, where do you think it's going to go? The best level that I like is this way down here at 38. Well, we're currently trading at, $37.97. Actually, in after hours, we're at $44. We're up just a hair. Selling puts that far out of the money, which was just not going to get me the premium on silver. Now, maybe if I did, 30 days, I would have gotten better premium. Margaret says, try the SI chart. All right, let's go to SI. There's still nothing that's that great. That level that I pointed out on just a minute ago will actually be right around 42. Now, there is another little zone over here. It's kind of tricky on how you would draw this one, but this would be maybe my first stop. That's going to be between 40, come on, Merlin, 44 and a quarter down to 43.80. Right, that would be the first stop there. But you look at where we stopped today and the tail bounced up. Well, that was a logical spot. I do think that we'll probably see a little bit more nervousness in silver going forward, but we tiptoed right into this demand zone that it currently bounced out of, which is between 47.50 down to 46.70. So those are your kind of three stair steps out there for silver right now. If you're trading the futures side, if you look at SLV, those levels are completely different. Remember, the futures markets include after hours trading, which gives you a little bit clearer picture, but it's also forecasting out into the future. It's not the price right now. It's the expectations of what that price might be certainly out in the future. Liz, I don't have that set up here, the gold-silver ratio. Unfortunately, I don't have that one set up here, and it would take me a little bit too long to do that right now. So I think when we look at the teaser for today, the thumbnail, which is gold, pullback or crash, I think what you're just going to get here is a pullback. I think what you look at is a pullback in gold or gold and silver. Let's go back to the SI futures so I can pull fibs on that to see what that might look like. Same thing. I'm going from the low point to our peak right here, and a 38% retracement is actually exactly 100% where we arrived today. So that's a good one. None of the other lines line up here. So this is something that some traders will talk about. You may have heard the term confluence. Confluence is where multiple indicators or multiple studies line up on top of each other. So right now, the bounce we had today, which is, again, that right around 47.50, that was a 38% retracement. Right? 38% retracement was $47.34, and there we have them lined right up on top of each other, and lo and behold, we bounced off that today. So nice potential buy point there if you are anticipating this being the first phase of a pullback and then bouncing out of it. I don't know. I'm not convinced that we're done. I think that there may be some more downside move here for gold and for silver, but I certainly do not think we're in a crash. I do not think we're going to be in a crash. Let's hold off the Fort Knox visit. Yeah. Les put an interesting poll. He proposed to do this poll, and I just don't have enough space to type it all in. But let me see here what you guys think. Let's try to do the poll manually. Let's see. Where did that poll go? So I like this one. You know, we had Trump and Musk apparently say that they were going to go to Fort Knox. I don't know if they ever actually went there. But let's propose these three possible scenarios, and I thought it was interesting. So I will read them out. Unfortunately, when I do the poll, it doesn't allow me to type this much in. So you guys type in what you think. Number 1, number 2, or number 3. Number 1, they didn't find any gold, but didn't want to say anything because it might upset the markets. That's choice number 1. Choice number 2, they didn't find any gold, but just wanted to move on. Number 3, they found the gold, but wouldn't admit that they were wrong. So get to those 3. And maybe number 4 is they found it, everything was there, and, all was fine. What do you guys think? 1, 2, or 3? Number 1 is they didn't find any gold, but they didn't want to say anything because it might upset the markets. Number 2, they didn't find any gold, but just wanted to move on. And number 3, they found the gold, but wouldn't want to admit that they were wrong. Rob says it's missing. No one knows. No one really knows, right? I would love to know. I want to have Fox, CNN, and Bloomberg, right? So you kind of cover all the grounds of political affiliations, live, go through there and show us this gold. Because honestly, as a citizen, I don't buy it. I am in the camp of number 1. I see quite a few of you saying, we're pretty evenly distributed here, right? You got a pretty even distribution here. Most people don't believe, too, that they didn't find any gold but just wanted to move on. I think that they look behind the walls there and we're like, oh my goodness, we can't say this to the American people. Because if we tell not just the American people, imagine they say, I don't know, I'm making up the number. I don't know how much gold they say they have. Maybe I'll just do a little quick search for that. How much gold is in Fort Knox? So we've got this 147 million ounces of gold. 147 million ounces of gold. We've been telling the world this, right? And I'll put it up here so you guys can see it. 147 million troy ounces of gold. That was supposed to be as of earlier this year in 2025. Okay, well, if the world finds out that we don't have that gold, then essentially what it means is we've been lying to the world, which, shocker, I'm pretty sure no one here would find that out of the ordinary. But then it really I think it would create so much market instability, so much political instability that it would cause chaos. And I think that would be one of those things where you just go, no, we're not saying anything. I think if the gold was there, then they would have publicized it because it would have been a show of strength, in my opinion. If we say we've got 147 million ounces of gold, here it all is. We've audited it. We've got exactly what we say. I'm firmly in the number 1 category, which would be they went there and they're like, oh crap, we cannot disclose to the world that this is the issue. What's that, like 600 billion? I guess we can pull up the math here. If you got 147 million, there's 140. Oh, we'll go backspace 1. So there's my math calculation, 147 million. And currently gold, we'll just do the futures market right now, is trading at, call it 4,100. Times that by 4100. You're looking at 602 billion. Yeah, wowzers. Wowzers. What would the dollar do if you were correct? In my opinion, the dollar would plummet. I'm trying to figure out, honestly, Margaret, it's a great question. I think that if we, And if you guys think differently, let me know. Type in the chat. I'm curious. This is not my forcing anything on. It's just my opinion. I think if the world were to find out that we did not have the gold. Remember, the gold is actual, like, real tangible stuff. That's part of the assets of America. If we don't have that, then I think the value of America goes down, technically because we don't have that $602 billion worth, but the reputation and the integrity of America goes down. And I think people would just be unloading the dollar. I think that would be a pretty significant dump of the U.S. dollar. That's my take on it. I know that some people could probably make the argument for it strengthening the dollar, but I think that would actually really be a very, 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 very bad thing. You don't want China to know no matter what it is. I agree with you, John. I think this is one you kind of just shut up about. I just find it funny that it was such a theatrical, political thing the beginning of the year. And I'll be honest, I'm with Trump too. Audit it. I'd love to see it. I think every American, regardless of your political affiliation, would love to see an audit of Fort Knox. If you tell us that we have all this stuff and it's part of my country, I'd like to verify it. I certainly would love to know that it was there. We need Parker Schnobel to find the gold rush. I don't remember Parker. I don't know the Parker Schnobel reference there. Anyway, this is why I am such a fan of blockchain. Because if the government was holding Bitcoin and had a specific address, then we would know exactly what the government was holding. So, for example, 21 Capital. If you go to 21 Capital, okay, so 21 Capital is a Bitcoin treasury. What's awesome about their product is it not up here yet? They actually have their address. See if there used to be an address on here where they actually showed their portfolio, and so you could click on it and it would show you exactly what the address is. But maybe I'm mistaken here. This is like maybe a different site. But they have their Bitcoin is on the blockchain, and they have it in a specific wallet address. So they're designed to show you that they really own it. And if the government did that and pointed to wallets, for example, right now we have those 200,000 Bitcoin that were moved from the Treasury Department or from the Marshal Service to the Treasury Department. What wallet? Where is that Bitcoin, right? You should be able to point to that wallet address so we know and can trust that it's actually real and legitimate. Crypto is one of those things that gives you that great insight of transparency. No one knows exactly about what the gold situation's like. No one trusts the dollar because you can just print it out of thin air. So, yeah, I'd like to see some accountability here. Ned Schnelby should audit Fort Knox. I don't even know who these people are. Imagine what that would do for Bitcoin, Jimmy. Yeah, it would drive the price of Bitcoin up because it's true. It's honest. You can see it. Love it. Bring it. Bring it on. All right, I will move on here from that topic and move into something else. Obviously, this was the big stuff for today, which is that big pullback or a crash in silver. Again, I'm in the camp of I think that this is just a bit of a pullback. I think we got a little bit further to go. Looking at that silver chart, it looks like this is the stopping point for silver. But if we look at gold futures, I think you got a little bit more downside move before we actually get to a level that is somewhat significant, which is right around 4,000 on gold. Still another $100 down. Hey, we fell $250 today, so $100 should be not that big of a deal. All right, let's shift completely here. I don't know if anybody spent the time today to watch the Payments and Innovation Conference held by the Federal Reserve. So one of the FOMC members, Waller, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Waller after the comments I heard today. And here's a guy that's probably in his late 60s, early 70s, and he is so in touch with what the current system of payment systems looks like in the United States, and also what digital assets, DeFi, can do for our markets going forward. If you had not had a chance, I would encourage you to read the opening remarks. It is very clear that this is one of those situations where they're not worried about stable coins. They want to make sure that everything is kind of under control. So one of the comments that came up today was from Waller. And he says, it's the Fed's job to embrace the disruption, don't avoid it. And that was when he was talking about stable coins and DeFi marketplaces, which tells me the Fed is on it. they're going to be issuing or regulating a whole marketscape. Now, there were two different panels. For those of you who are very interested in this topic, I would encourage you to watch the video. It's like 2.5 or 3 hours. But the first one was all about DeFi, and you had Sergey Nazarov. What was unique about this conference with the Federal Reserve is they brought in multiple crypto experts. So on each panel, you had like two people that were experts for specific crypto projects. So for example, the DeFi one had Sergey Nazarov, who runs Chainlink, which is 70% of all of the DeFi volume. You had Lead Bank was represented, Bank of New York was on the panel, and Fireblocks. So you had two crypto firms, two actual big regulated banks in there. Later on, you had stablecoins, which had Paxos, which issues stablecoins. You had Dolap, which is huge in Latin America. And then you had the CEO for Circle, and also this one of the lead guys, Tim Spence, which is for Fifth Third Bank. So what was great about this was hearing the banks tell you, here's why we need transparency. Here's how digital assets can make our systems, our communication better. And then hearing the digital companies say, here's how we're going to do all this stuff. It's the dawning of a new era. And I keep saying this over and over again. And I think we should all be really excited about this, because in 18 months from now, I thought it was August of next year, but they keep saying 18 months. I thought it was 18 months from the initial signing of the Genius Act, which would make it August of next year. Either way, right around August of next year, all these rules will be implemented. And now we will start to see, as I mentioned, banks like Bank of New York, Fifth Third Bank, now custodying cryptocurrency and digital assets, maybe even issuing stable coins. And then the question becomes, what's the interoperability of these stable coins with all of these other financial firms? How does it all tie together? To me, phenomenal. I think it just means growth and expansion, and our money will all be digital in a few years. The meeting, I think, pretty much established that. One of the arguments that the guy made, I think it was from Fifth Third Bank. He says, if I want to send $1 million from a bank in Germany to a bank in Florida, that could take 72 hours and have a huge transaction cost. He goes, but if I do that with these digital payment rails, I can do it in under 72 seconds, and it's a lot cheaper. What he didn't mention, which I was hoping he would have, was not only is it faster and cheaper, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, so there's never downtime, but also that when you do this, there's far greater transparency. And part of the discussion came into this, not just transparency, but also into the interoperability. So this is something that for my crypto program we'll be focusing on quite a bit over the next few months, is the interoperability of these blockchains, right? How does Polkadot or Cardano or Avalanche communicate with the others, and is there that infrastructure in place? Right now, USDC, which is originally built on Ethereum, it will move on to something else here soon. That is on 28 different blockchains. It's interoperable on 28 different blockchains. Anything that's an EVM compatible blockchain, you can use USDC on. EVM is Ethereum Virtual Machine. So this was a very exciting conference today. It really was, watching old curmudgeon politicians sit and regulators talking about the future of money and payment systems. And we are going to see big changes. There's going to be a lot of big stuff. Of course, I will do my best to convey to you when I get them and understand them what all those changes might look like, how it's going to impact you and me on a daily basis. But pretty exciting stuff. I don't think I could be much more excited. And now it brings up this question. I typed into my mid-journey as I was creating the graphics, I typed in blockchain wars. And it brought up this picture, which I think is cool, right? The question will be, what blockchains will these systems be built on top of? Is it Ethereum? Is it Cardano? Is it Avalanche? Is it EOS? Is it Sui? There's dozens. Or, as in the case of Circle, Circle is actually creating their own proprietary blockchain called Arc. Now, just to humor you guys and have a nice laugh, when I was typing in blockchain wars, that was my prompt, I also got this picture, which I thought was pretty damn funny. For those that can't see it on the podcast, it came up with a Star Wars. So it looks like Darth Vader fighting a stormtrooper with their lightsabers, and Bitcoin is in the middle. So I like the graphic. So much so I had to include it with you guys today. But this is going to be a growing, contentious battle between blockchains going forward. In my crypto program this morning, we talked at length about who I think the victor is going to be. But there may be several victors in this. And as I mentioned, Circle, which is the second largest stable coin in the world, is building their own blockchain. They're building one called Arc, which is designed specifically to house stablecoins, be a Forex currency platform. Of course, that will be proprietary, right? That won't be an open source. You won't be able to buy into that. That's going to be what their business does. But some projects will take on the transparent open source projects like Ethereum, which a lot of stuff is built on now. Show it again. There you go. Yeah, it's a pretty good one. Gotta love AI. AI is just getting more and more incredible. You know, what's really freaky about AI, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but really about 2 weeks ago, Sora, and I've actually shown you guys Sora about, I think a year ago I showed you Sora, which was doing video stuff. And I was like, this is incredible what you can do. Now they opened up Sora to the public, and as many of you have witnessed, Sora is doing crazy things. The videos with Mr. Rogers or Bob Ross and all the old rappers, you know, watching Mr. Rogers and Snoop Dogg, Mr. Rogers and Tupac has got to be my favorite. Love it. So at a certain point, we're not going to know what's real and what's not anymore. These videos are becoming so good, you just won't know what's real and what's not. All right, let's get back. Merlin, what's an altcoin? Great question, Tio. It's very simple. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Everything else, basically 100% of everything else, is an altcoin. Exactly. Big Eb says every other coin other than Bitcoin. Yeah. Now, within the altcoin world, you know, you can segment that, and there are some very good projects, but the vast majority of cryptocurrencies are just jokes. They're meme coins. They don't serve any purpose. And I think that's our biggest challenge is how do I go through these, filter, and find the stuff that might actually be a real project, that might actually deliver something down the line of value and therefore drive the price of its token or coins up. You see the one with Tupac, Kobe? Yep. Love it. There's so many good ones out there, Oliver. I love it. I crack up. And actually the ones that really are funny, and they're off color, they're so bad that they're funny, is the Bob Barker. The Price is Right. Oh my goodness. Man. Savage. Absolutely savage. Anyway, let's get back to our drawing board over here and work our way up from the bottom to the top. You had a continuation. There we go. We'll start with the gold, which you've already beaten this one up. Let's get rid of that. I'll get rid of that line as well. I'm going to leave this here just to see, you know, do we get there? I hope we do, because I wouldn't mind selling some puts on gold and getting gold at a cheaper price. But long term, I think you'll see gold continue to move up. It just had too big of a run. It was due for a pause. No big deal. But that was down 5.7%. If we look at some of the other metals today, though, let's go down to the metals here. Platinum down 8%, silver down 7%, palladium down 6.5%, even copper, not a big drop, only 1.3%, but metals really taking it on the chin there. And some of these other commodities actually looking pretty darn decent. You had coffee today was up 2%. You had lean hogs was up $1.46. This is great. Come on, keep falling, man. I need my bacon to get cheaper and cheaper. Unfortunately, the thing that's not falling, live cattle, just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. Man, driving me crazy. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a culotte steak. So I was at the store yesterday, and as you guys know me, I think most of you know me well enough. I am a gigantic fan of deals. If I can find a deal, great. There was a culotte steak, which is, I believe it's a cut of top sirloin, but it's one of the better cuts. And it was something like $15.99 a pound. They had it on sale for $6.99 a pound, and it had a 30% off coupon. So I got this gigantic 2.5 pound steak, which I threw in the smoker last night. I'm telling you, this steak was one of the best I've ever made. It was phenomenal, delicious. Big Ev says, Ready Merlin, have you checked your gold coin values lately? They have skyrocketed. I have not looked at any of the values of my gold coins. I just leave them there, Big Eb. They're in safe deposit box. They'll just stay there forever. I'm not worried about them. But I didn't realize that rare coins were actually moving up even faster than gold. Good, bring it on. Oh, love it. Bring it on. Sure, let me get to that one in just a second, Juan. Let me go through our main markets here, and then I'll dive back into that. But definitely a lot of volatility in commodities and in crypto. Crypto's just all over the place, just wild. All right, let's go back to the top and run from gold and go into the Russell. I got nothing to say about the Russell. It's just the trend is your friend till the bend at the end. Still looks great, right? There's nothing to speak of, even though it was down 0.47 on the day. No big deal. Your 10-year, that is interesting. And we've been talking about this one and how the trend has been down. It's been making lower highs and lower lows. Right now, we're down 0.43% today. We're sub 4% again on today's session. And as I mentioned the other day, I do think that if it continues, we're going to be targeting at 3.75, which is great. Let's get those 30-year fixed rate mortgages down lower and lower and lower. That would be fantastic. NASDAQ 100, pretty much unchanged on the day. You can see a little bit of it's almost like a spinning top candle. Let me get that on there for you. You got a really small compressed range right at all-time highs. That is usually not a good sign when you come into an overhead supply like that and you have a spinning top. Generally, that implies that you're going to see a downside move. However, I'm not sold on that. So what I would do if I were you is I would just draw a yellow box that completely envelops today's range. And that range on today's NASDAQ 100 futures goes from 25,203 to 25,368. So you got a 165-point range there. If it opens up within it, fine, let it. If it breaks above that high, you got your long opportunity, and it'll probably be a big breakout. If it drops below that, then I think you got a shorting opportunity. Keep it simple. That's the KISS method. There we go. Still bullish above the supply zone. Above it will break out above. Yeah, if it breaks above it, absolutely, Rob. Definitely, but much more bullish on this if it breaks above. But today's candle reflects stalling, right? It reflects slowing down. Now, you could add on volume here if you wanted. So you have relatively low volume compared to what we've seen for the past few months. So that's not a great sign. But, we can all hypothesize on where we think it's going to go from here. It feels like the trend is your friend, like it should go higher. But why not do something simple like I just showed you, which is let's just wrap some bands around it, and I'm not going to do anything until it breaks above 25,368 or below 25,203. Right? It just keeps it real simple. Dr. Juan says last time gold was up 9 straight weeks, we had a 22 to 26% pullback. Huh? I haven't looked at those stats, but if we go into a 20% pullback, let's go 22% down from current levels or from the peak. 22 would actually take us to pretty much this line I have on your screen, which I'm not sure why that one was there. Oh, that was the original breakout of this kind of ascending triangle pattern we had, which would bring us right down to about $3,400. We'll see. We shall see. I don't think we'll get down that far, but if it does, this would be a great buying opportunity. 3,400, I'm a buyer for sure, without question. Moving on up, we have the S&P, which I just showed you there. Again, same thing as the NASDAQ. You got kind of a spinning top right near all-time highs. If you're going to be zoning out levels here, there's your all-time high zone. Well, we tiptoed into it. Now, I think you wait for the breakout, just like we talked about with the NASDAQ 100. Should make it much easier for you. Dollar index. We mentioned this one, some headlines sensationalizing the dollar today. Look, it was only up 0.37%. This is not a gigantic move up in the dollar index, but it's not selling off, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we were talking about from a political perspective. So I'd keep my eye on this one. Again, if we get above that 100 mark on the dollar index, I think you have a lot more upside move, and that could crush commodities even more, which might support Dr. Juan's thesis that we're due for a big pullback based off historical information. All right, crude oil. We actually had a follow through on the pattern we talked about yesterday. Remember we talked about this kind of double hammer formation? We had a hammer on Friday, you had a hammer on Monday. Today we actually you got a trigger point. It would have put you in this trade today. Some of you probably are in this trade right now. I would hold. I think you're okay here still, although you would have liked to have seen a nice big green candle with follow through if it finally broke through it. Let me look at it on a 5-minute time frame. So you would not have made that trade. Yeah, and this would have been your entry here at 8:25 in the morning Pacific time once it broke down. Remember, you got to wait for it to break above that level, and the pre-market does not count. So it would have broken above 8:25 in the morning. You'd actually be up right now because it's up in the after-hour session, but not a big follow-through. Really feel like this should have a much greater breakout pop. I do think with the tension that's going on over there that this is going to have a nice move to the upside. So we'll see how that one turns out. And lastly, you got your Bitcoin right now trading at 112,000 for Bitcoin. Technically, it still doesn't look good. I think someone brought that up yesterday, like from a technical perspective, this doesn't look that great. It's got some issues there. Well, that's okay. What we got, just got to make sure we don't break that low of 104. Actually, 103.7 was the low, but hopefully we'll stay above that one. Not happy with the way it turned out today. We were up at 114 earlier today. I was like, all right, here we go. Well, we're back to 112. I'll take that. Actually, that's the future side of things. Right now, we're at 110, so it's looking even worse. Margaret says 100 is coming, huh? Dang it, Margaret. Shh. Bite your tongue, Margaret. Don't say that. Well, if it does, that's the logical spot, right? You got this broadening formation. Based off, again, I talked about this yesterday, based off the way that this broadening formation is going, we should rally back up and actually hit an all-time high before coming back down and challenging those lows. But who knows? Who knows? But yes, 100,000 would be logical because of the touch points we've had back in earlier this year in May and June and July. Yeah, it's right, big. Much quiet market. Let's see. Other things. Let's talk about NFLX. Netflix missed. Down 6% in the after-hour session. I will get rid of this blue line here. And I'll get rid of that line. And you guys can see on my screen, there's like a very faint blue line. That's where we are right now. It's actually coming into a decent, it's okay, demand zone. But I'll show you the after hours here because, we talked about it yesterday being that popcorn trade of the day. Well, this is why we call them the popcorn trade of the day, because just look how much that thing moved in a matter of 5 minutes. I'll even put a 1 minute time frame on here just so you guys can see how wild it was. You fell in 2 minutes, in 120 seconds, 7.42% slide in the price of Netflix, and it has not really recovered. It's kind of just sticking to those lows. So not good. I didn't look and see what the numbers were or what the factors were. We can refresh over here and show you their numbers, but I didn't read anything on it because I had just been too dang busy. So they missed. They were expected to come out at $6.89 per share profit. Actually came out at $5.87, so they missed by $1.02. Down 6%. Notice some of the other ones here that were interesting. There's some stocks in here that you wouldn't have expected that. Look at General Motors here before market open, right? So General Motors, like really? Well, they're expected to make $2.28. They came out at $2.80. A pretty significant beat in their chart. Well, GM has everybody going, good morning. Feeling happy about that. Big pop to the upside there for General Motors. Jumped $8 today, 14.86%. Crazy. Yeah. Dakota Aggressive knows it's a crap stock, but still, yeah, it is. But, Beyond? Yeah. I saw that, Dakota, and this is a wild one. So Beyond Meat. When Beyond Meat came out and did their IPO, I kept saying, look, this is great for now. But what's going to happen is you're going to get competition. Every major meat manufacturer is going to go, okay, well, we'll make an alternative to meats. And BYND has been unbelievable. So here's BYND. This is, in my opinion, a short squeeze because there's just no reason for Beyond Meat to be that popular. There's so many different meat companies out there. It's up 460% in 3 trading sessions. Really 2, right? Yeah, it is a meme stock at this point, Big Eb. I can't take it seriously. I didn't look to see what the short interest was on this. Let me see if I can bring it up for you guys here on Yahoo because theirs is generally very delayed. So we'll go to Yahoo Finance and we'll see if I can find the short interest. My guess is very high short interest, right? So now we're back to that group think where people find out that there's heavy short interest on specific companies and then they go and short that stuff. So let me go here to, here we are. Let's go. I think it's statistics is where we find the short interest. So here's your short interest. So 54% of all of the shares are short. That's gigantic, right? 54% is crazy. Yeah, Dakota, you had 1.8 billion shares traded today, and there's only 397 total, 397 million. So essentially, this was trading. It traded. Let's see, that'd be 3 times double that. You're almost 6 times its total shares outstanding was traded today. That's wild, right? Absolutely wild. And when you look at the chart, Beyond Meat, let's add volume on here. Beyond Meat really hasn't had that high a volume. If you take out that, this is your normal. It's like, 1 million, maybe a couple million. And then you go through the last couple days. And yesterday, Beyond Meat traded 1.2 billion. Today was 1.97 billion shares traded. That is just unbelievable. I'm telling you what, some hedge fund got smoked today. We'll probably hear about it in the next couple of weeks is how someone just got absolutely annihilated on Beyond Meat. Now, one thing you guys can do if you're kind of fun, you can go here, if you're not kind of fun, but if you want something fun to do, you can go here short float and you can go over 30%. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the elite membership because I would go over 50 or over 80%. Seems like super high. But all of these companies that I'm showing you right now, and there are 3 pages of them, which means there's almost 60 companies right now that have over 30% short interest. And I would look through here for big companies. You can see here's Beyond Meat. My guess is what's going to happen, and this usually happens in waves, is they're going to start doing short squeezes on more of these companies. So if anybody here has the paid version of FinViz, or you can find a filter that's better and show anything that's above, start at 80% and then drop down and see company names that are above, anything above 50 is going to be a target. And what will happen is these guys will go and spread the talk that, hey, time for a short squeeze. And all you have to do is orchestrate with enough people, group think, right? The hive mind mentality. You start buying this thing, driving it up, using leverage, and then all of a sudden it triggers a short squeeze and you get these massive moves and gamma squeezes on the options. It's wild. How do you get more volume traded today than outstanding shares? Because you have people buying back shares creates one level of buying opportunity, and then you have people trying to buy it. So you're getting people that are flipping it on the way up and just keeps, as Big Eb says, multiple large trades. You're squeezing people out, but you're also creating new buyers for this thing. And some people are just, scalping it. So they jump in and getting a little bit profit, and then jump back in, jump back in, jump back in. So you get these big block shares trades. It's wild. I personally I don't mess with it. Not really my space. I don't believe in the short squeeze stuff. It's just too risky. You're gonna eventually get really lucky and hit one or two, but for the most part, you're gonna end up striking out a lot, and that just ultimately, for me, takes away from your consistency. I think it damages your morale and it makes you feel like a worse trader than you are. So stay away from that stuff. Personally, I had some questions about the metals company or the rare earth stuff. So I can revisit that if you guys like. I'll run through just some of the names. The first one I had on that list the other day was ARRNF. Did I stutter? ARRNF. We have had a significant pullback. That show was actually on Monday, October 13th. And from that point, from where we close on ARRNF, that symbol is down 46%. Wow. 46%, man. And by the way, I did not short any of these. I think I made it very clear on the show that when you have parabolic moves up, things generally come crashing back down. And I forgot who was John. Did your dad close out some of this? Did you lock in some profits, right? Because there was a little bit of gloating going on how Pops is kicking butt on these rare earth companies and was like, lock in some profit, right? Now all of a sudden those prices have dropped significantly. Now I do think long term they'll be okay, but when anything goes parabolic like this, you've got to be ready to take money off the table. Look at critical metals, CRML. This one as well, monstrous decline in just a short window of time. This one has dropped 45% since we did that show on Monday. Wild. MP is another one. Actually, some of the kids from, I think it's UCF, University of Central Florida. That one's still down 24%. They didn't like that I did the show. They were like, hey, awesome, John. Super stoked. And hey, if you got out near the top, I don't see a reason why getting back in at a lower price wouldn't be a bad deal. Rare earths are not going to just all of a sudden disappear and we don't need them anymore, right? We'll still have controversy. We'll still see what this deal goes with China. So, yes, he did sign the rare earth metals deal with Australia. I would be inclined to buy in, as Big Eb says, buy back in on some of these at lower prices. MCRY. That's Mercury Systems. No, MRCY. Mercy. Not as big of a sell-off as some of the other ones. USAR. That's another big decline. Man, some of these are just gigantic declines. That one's down 30 from the levels when we did the show, but not off the peak, even more off the peak. How about METC? METC, another one. So anyway, I don't know if I'd say very low price, Rob. It's certainly a lot better than paying 40 or 50% higher than it was just a couple of days ago. UURAF was another one. Yeah, man. I mean, off of its peak, UURAF is down 53%. Woo, Lord. Bad stuff. So anyway, thought I'd share that one and show you guys kind of, not show you, but would bring back that discussion we had that Monday. And you can still be very bullish on something and still try to time those markets. And that was my point with those rare earth metals. Let's go look at the remainder of, let's go look at tomorrow. So obviously we had Netflix report earnings. You can see GE also reported good earnings. So did Lockheed Martin, but Lockheed Martin down 3%, even though they had pretty good earnings. Coca-Cola beat as well. They beat by 5%, and was up 4%. And then Intuitive Surgical, which I think Margaret is still, Margaret, you were, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were the Intuitive Surgical one, right? ISRG. So you had a significant drop in ISRG, but today up 17% in the after-hours session. So bam, loving that one. What's wild is if you look at where ISRG is right now, I'll put a line on the screen so you can see where it's at. It's right up here. It's at $544 and change, which if you look closely, at least from my perspective, I would argue that is the very beginning of a supply zone. Well, I mean, this might be a great short on the open. I will wait and see how the market opens up, but it's playing with fire, shorting that thing on the open, but maybe I'm certainly not going to be selling any calls against that, or selling cut naked calls. I wouldn't do that, but man, I'd rather it gap down. Oh well. There we go. What else did I have for earnings for tomorrow? We still have some big names. Next week really is the motherlode of major names, but we have Tesla reporting tomorrow after hours. That will be the one. I'm very curious to see how they perform. You have SAP, you have IBM, AT&T, Lam Research, GE Vernova as well, which that chart has been very interesting. Let's go GEV. Right? This one has been very interesting because we had this just parabolic run from those April lows, and all of a sudden, it just kind of flatlined, right? We're just not really doing much on Vernova, so I would just draw a box around that zone and wait for it to break out one way or the other, and we could see that tomorrow on their earnings announcement. As far as economic announcements, let's bring up your calendar here to show you what's going on for Wednesday, October 22nd. Did I have the wrong date on today's show? Did I have that? No, I have it right, the 21st. The 22nd. You notice on the U.S., only crude oil inventories, that one will be coming out. It's not a government thing, but until we get the government to finally get back to work and do what they're supposed to do, we'll probably see delayed responses on a lot of economic announcements. Next week, there's some big stuff happening as well. If you are trading in the morning, ECB President Lagarde will be speaking, and I'm curious what she's going to say because some of her comments may be tied to the Federal Reserve meeting today about stablecoins. She does not have a lot of nice things to say about digital assets and stablecoins and crypto. She wants nothing to do with it, but I think it's like trying to stop a tsunami with your hand. It's probably not going to work. You're just going to have to go with it and make sure that you have your positions in place and understand the technology. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. Let's see. Is the rare earth materials trade over? No, I don't think so. I think it's making people more aware, Margaret, of the necessity of rare earth minerals, what's needed. And I think making people more aware that technology, the real innovative stuff that we're using, whether it's cars or semiconductors or different applications, we need these things, right? We need those rare earth minerals. So I think that may create a buying opportunity at some of these lower levels, especially when some of them are down 50, 60%. Why not? When is Larry going to be on? I don't know. I haven't asked him. What will happen at the Fed meeting next week? Heck, if I know, Big Gab. I mean, we all know that they're going to cut rates, right? It's a foregone conclusion. You can look at the Fed funds futures here, which I'll bring up right now, and that's it should be like a 90-something% probability of a rate cut. 98.9% we're getting a 25 basis point cut. That one's pretty much determined. What I am uncertain about is, do we get the third one in December? And right now the markets are saying yes, 98%. I was listening, I forget who it was, but there was another presentation. Big Eb, how do you block people on this thing? There was some other guy doing a presentation, and he was saying that there's going to be no more rate cuts this year. And I wanted to raise my hand and be like, are you not looking at Fed funds futures? Like, this is going to tell you where they're going. Yeah, we were probably going to have 2 for sure, which means I owe you dinner with drinks, so you can't try to get out of the drinks. And then we might even get the third one. I don't think we should do a third one. I don't think that they should do it in December, but why not round out the year on a clean slate, make President Trump happy, and Powell can go out with a bang. I think that's the belief system. And when the Fed cuts rates, the market goes up. Typically it does, but remember, this is all built in. I think that what we're witnessing now is the market saying, we believe that we're going to get 2 more rate cuts by the end of the year, which means that this market should go higher, which is why we should stay long and bullish on this market until proven otherwise. I mentioned talking with Charles Payne about this, and he's just as buy the freaking dip. He is all about markets moving higher and higher and higher. At a certain point, that will come to an end. But with rates getting lower and President Trump, pushing policy, and I think you'll see this market continue to rally. Yes, Big Eb. Let's figure out where you want to go to dinner. You want steak and lobster? Is that where we're going? What about AMD, says Phil. Right? It's funny, you guys didn't ask many questions earlier, but now I'm just about to wrap up here. You're all asking questions. Look, Phil, we talked about this several times over the past few months on AMD's positioning, and they are offering a product that will take some of the business from NVIDIA. And the reason I say take some business is because according to the data and also to people that I know work at NVIDIA, they're turning away people. Like my buddy who works for them as a sales rep, he says, if you're coming at NVIDIA with like a less than $1 billion order, they can't service you. They're just taking the biggest clients up front. So AMD offers a lesser performance chip, but people are going to jump on that. And they did issue some new technology. I mean, right now, this looks great. My big concern, Tim, is you have a monstrous unfilled gap. This unfilled gap scares me. And the reason is most gaps tend to fill. So I'm not a huge fan of this at this time. You look what's gone over the past 2 weeks or so. It's definitely making higher highs and higher lows, but the momentum feels to be slowing. I would say stay long AMD, but I would also put stop losses below at strategic points where you say, okay, it's no longer going up, so I'm going to move on to the sidelines here and stay away. So I think AMD right now is still looking good. Still looking good to the upside. What else we got? Lots of concerns about in the housing market. Anything you're hedging? No, I'm not. There are a lot of concerns in the housing market. You look here at IYR, which is a real estate ETF, and what has housing really done? Nothing. It's been traversing sideways. Now, I'm curious to see what some of the new home sales, existing home sales, pending home sales data looks like, although some of that information is delayed. One big factor for that housing market is this right here. Continues to go lower. I don't think we need to worry so much about the housing market, right, Tim? Right, if you look at the 10-year, this is what the 30-year fixed rate mortgage is based off of. And let me see real quick. Let's go to 30-year. I'm sorry, I got to type and talk at the same time. I'm going to bring up the Fed's 30-year fixed rate mortgage chart. So we can, usually the Fed's got a good one. No, there's the Fed. All right, so here's your 30-year fixed rate mortgage according to the Federal Reserve. And that this is obviously is let's go 5 years. Okay, so there's 5 years. Right now, it's saying that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage is 6.27%. So we're getting very close to the lowest levels we've seen since 2023. And if that does continue, I am in the camp of that's a boost for housing. That'll drive prices higher because it means affordability. Whereas if you went back to May of this year, we were at almost 7%. The impact of 60 basis points on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage is thousands and thousands of dollars. More people will qualify. So I'm not so concerned, even though, Tim, I do believe that there's problems ahead for the housing market. I think that if we continue to see this 10-year bond drift lower and lower, and that's what the trend is telling us, then I think more demand comes into the housing market. More people qualify for loans. The challenge I think what's going to happen is I think that we're going to start to see some layoffs here because of AI, which, I mean, it's incredible what that stuff does. You can do so much with it. You can replace dozens of workers. As that displacement starts to come in, I think this is something we should all be concerned with. As we start to see more and more layoffs and job displacement, that means less money being put into 401ks, less people being qualified for homes, and that could snowball into something cyclical, but we're not there yet. Not there yet. Right now, this 10 years telling me we're probably going to continue to see housing move to the upside, which is great for anybody who's a homeowner. All right, that's going to do it for me. I'm not going to get drawn into a 1-hour show. Sorry, folks. For those of you who are new, I see some new names out there. Hit that subscribe button if you did like the show. You don't have to, but if you did like the show, then definitely click on the like button. If you didn't like it, my email is on the screen, tradermerlin@gmail.com. You can always just tell me what you would like to see differently, changed, improved. I'm always good for that. And then Margaret says, less Phish concerts. Not a chance, dear. I will continue to spend as much money as possible on Phish concerts to support the greatest band of 4 musicians to ever assemble. All right, that's going to do it for me, everybody. Have a fantastic day. If there's something you want to discuss on tomorrow's show, let me know. Email me at tradermerlin@gmail.com. Until then, peace. I'm out of here.